Hello and welcome everybody to this, my very first guest spot on the Wild Wisdom Wellbeing group with my wonderful guest. I'm so excited. I've got Jane Greer with me today, and she is a celebrant from Create Ceremonies. So I'm gonna just ask Jane to tell us all about that. But first of all, Jane, if you would let us know, because I know you haven't always been a celebrant, how did you get into this role? What drew you to it, and how did you get to be where you are today?
I'm one of those people that's got a really varied work history, so when people would say, well, what's on your CV? You can't really, it goes on for pages because it's quite varied. I started off as a stage manager in theatre. That was my grad. So I trained to do that and did that for 10 years. And then came to the conclusion, if I wanted anything else in my life, then I needed to change that because it was 24/7, have a relationship, have children, all of that kind of stuff. So I started looking around for other alternatives. And I think it's probably at that point that I started switching away a bit. But I've done a whole host of different things. I've worked for different charities across the country. So I was a supplies coordinator for London Open Christmas. I ran the volunteer section of Buddhist. I ran a community centre down here in Abergavenny when we moved back. I've done some administration. I became administrator for the first handwritten illuminated Bible that's been made in the last 700 years. That was extraordinary, and that happened just outside Abergavenny, and not a role that I thought I'd see myself in. Amazing thing to be involved with. But certainly my handwriting's not like that. But interesting, at the point that I was at the community centre, running the community centre, I got made redundant with no warning. It came out of the blue, very much so, and I was devastated because I loved doing that job, and I would been there since it started, since it opened, and it was really beginning to get known locally, and people appreciated what it was that we were putting on. And one of the ladies who was taking part in one of the classes that was happening at the centre, when I said that I was going to be finishing, said, well, I'm a registrar. I'm sure they're looking at the moment. Why don't you get in touch with them and see if there are any openings? Because I think that they're looking for somebody. Say that I recommended you, and I'm sure that'll help. So I got in touch with the registration service in Monmouthshire and went along and had a meeting. And the next thing I know, they're taking me on as a casual registrar, so working weekends, doing weddings, which is fantastic. I loved it. I like a wedding. I'm always one for a wedding. So it was great fun to be part of that. And I did my training, very short amount of time on the training at that point, and started being the one sitting at the desk. So the one nobody really notices is there, but is doing the legal side of what people think is the legal side of it. But actually the strictness of what you have to write in the book and how you can write it, when you can write it. It's strict. And that used to terrify me in a lot of ways. At the point where I got to stand at the front and to repeat the words and to be with the couples, that was kind of me in seventh heaven, really. I felt like it was a role I could really do. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I did that for several years alongside. I then got a full-time job working as a community engagement team. And I thoroughly enjoy doing that. It's all about people, isn't it? And I like working with people. So I did the two running together, and then eventually came to the conclusion I was fed up of doing effectively the same ceremony 7 times on a Saturday because everybody chosen the same bits in the same way, and started looking around for an alternative, feeling that couples really deserve to have a ceremony that reflects them and is more personal and has meaning for them, rather than being told exactly what they have to say and being threatened that effectively, that if you don't say each and every word of your vows correctly, then you're on the naughty step and you're going to go back and have to do it again. It seemed like it wasn't really the way to embrace your married life, the start of your married life. So I started looking around. Then a friend of mine's son died. So this young man was 24, and his dad asked me if I would create the ceremony for him. And conduct it for him. So I was a Buddhist leader to this gentleman. So that was appropriate on that level, if you like. But he wanted to make sure it was really open to all of his son's friends who were from lots and lots of different backgrounds, lots of different interests, political, medical, lots of different things going on. And we created the ceremony together, so I turned up there about 10 o'clock to set things up. I left at about 8 o'clock in the evening. We've been doing all kinds of stuff. It had been absolutely packed. So we'd had Buddhist influences in there. We'd had opportunity for people to talk and to laugh together and to share their stories of this young man together. They had a walk through the natural countryside to the burial space. People had time to connect with this young man, and the sadness was there without a doubt, because this was a young man and he died unexpectedly. But absolutely everybody was connecting with the joy that they got from knowing him and remembering that actually that goes on. So at the end of that, I kind of thought, I know I can do the weddings because I've kind of done those. Now I've kind of proved I can do a funeral. Maybe I need to look at this, what brings them together. And I found an article in a magazine, one of those women's magazines that always has I changed my life at the age of 50 and, 5 stories of people who've done something dramatically different. And one of them happened to be a celebrant. So I tore that one out and kept it to one side and did nothing about it for a while. And then eventually I got backed into a corner. I felt backed into a corner. I had a change of line manager, and then she had a change of line manager as well, all happening at the same time. And I didn't like the atmosphere of what was happening or the way it seemed to be going. And I thought, oh, blow this, I thought. This is the time for change. So rather than doing what I'd planned, which was to ease myself out of the job I was in, over the 3 years it was due to run, and then build up my business, I kind of shut it down overnight and went to my first networking event the next morning, and I kind of stood up saying, well, I think I've started my business today because I've got my job now. And that was the start of it. But looking back, it's fascinating how many of the roles that I've done have paved the way for me to be where I am now, and the importance of everything I've done in the past. I wouldn't be who I am now, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't be doing this now if I hadn't had the experiences that I've had. And that's phenomenal, really.
Yes, and I've kind of looked at some of the history of your work career that I know, and have thought, what a wonderful coming together of various things that you've done. And what you were saying there about the funeral that you were asked to create, and how you brought in so many elements, and there was the opportunity for celebrating the life of the young man, and also to have the joy and the happy memories, but also to have that sadness. And I know that, just to explain, Jane and I met at a networking meeting, and the thing that really helped us to connect was that we're both passionate about death not being a taboo. So Jane, I know you also run a death cafe in Abergavenny, and now online because of COVID and the lockdown. So can you tell us a little bit about why you have that passion about removing the taboo around death, and why you decided to take on the role of running the death cafe?
Because nobody else would. It's always a way, isn't it? I think when I started doing funerals, I was meeting with families and realizing how infrequently people have had any conversations about death and dying, whether they know that their loved one has a terminal diagnosis or whether it's come as a surprise. How already prepared about what they might want to have in their funeral, but also how unlikely people were to have spoken about death and dying at all in any way, shape and form. And I think as a Buddhist, it's certainly part of my practice that the importance of understanding where death fits in as part of life, and that actually if you don't grapple with understanding death and the eternity of life, then you're not going to truly live. You've always got this fear in the background. You've always got this, this might happen, this might happen. If we talk about it, it's going to happen, which seems to be the belief that goes around this superstitious disbelief, if you like, that actually if you start talking about death, then that means it's going to suddenly happen to somebody in your environment, or to you, or to your loved one. And I think it was that awareness that actually people were really suffering because they'd never had those conversations in any way, shape or form. I mean, previously, presumably, when more people were attending churches or chapels or going to, so they had some kind of belief system, then there was a pathway, if you like, and there was a tradition that you followed, there was a route that you went, and that was what you believed. And now, obviously, there are more faiths that are more widely available to people, but also a lot of people with no faith, or with an undisclosed faith, if you like, that they haven't really found out. They know there's something, they feel there's something, but they don't quite know what that is. And it can, at the point of real difficulty, death being a major one of them, that can leave people having nowhere to turn, because they don't know what they believe or what they think or what they want to do. So I think it was that double side of trying to support people to have conversations earlier, so that, you know, it becomes a familiar, you know, it's not that long ago that you would lay out your loved one when they died in your front room. That was what it was there for. It's the visit of the vicar for afternoon tea, or to lay out your dead, you know, and it was done as part of the family. And it was, yeah, there were traditions that were around that. There were people that were involved with that. And it was a very personal family affair. And in the last 100 years, it's become a very professional affair. And the family are no longer involved in it. And this whole fear factor is built up around a dead body, or keeping people at home with you. Or so people have managed to disempower themselves, if you like, and have handed over responsibility and everything else to professionals who do amazing jobs, and for the most part, very compassionately and from the heart. But actually, the family no longer know how they quite fit in. And I think it's very different being with your loved one when they've died and seeing the changes that are happening to them, and recognizing that actually, yeah, everything I know about this person is no longer there. Although they look like themselves, but actually everything, that vitality, that life is no longer there. And I think it's very different to when you go and visit somebody who's laid out in a chapel of rest. Whereas my first experience was going to see my dad, who died in hospital. My sister and I arrived down a few hours later, and he'd been laid out in the morgue there, and he was covered up to here with a velvet cloth, just had his head showing out in this darkened room, and we both went in and screamed because it looked somehow unreal and like he was going to sit up any minute. Yeah. And that image for me wasn't helpful. It didn't give me a connection with him. And then you feel guilty about it, and you kind of go, you don't know quite what to do. So yeah, I think I had that in the back of my mind. I started going along to some death cafes in Herefordshire. Those are the closest ones I could find, and I found them fascinating. That every month when you went, the conversations would be different. They were run by the hospice, St Michael's Hospice there. So sometimes it would be very practical. Somebody would be asking for practical ideas and information about what to do as their partner or their mother or whatever was dying. So what steps could they take? What could they do? Other times it was very philosophical and comparing the belief systems from different religions. Sometimes it was just very varied depending on who was there. And I felt that we needed to have one in Wales. There didn't seem to be much happening anywhere in Wales that I could see. And I thought, well, we need to have one. So I need to find a hospice to work with me to put it on, or somebody that's working directly in the palliative care field, if you like, so the pre-death, whereas obviously a lot of my experience was post, to work with me to put this on. And I tried for a length of time. I got no response from anywhere. So in the end, I kind of, it's another networking one of those things where it's kind of like, well, I stood up and I said, right, well, from next month, we're going to be having it. I'm going to be starting the Death Cafe, because, otherwise I was going to wait forever and a day. So it's been running. Now, I was trying to remember yesterday whether it's 2 years or 3 years. I'm not entirely certain. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's 3 years. In the back of a pub, they give us the room free, which is lovely. And it's been extraordinary. And it's every month is a surprise. You never know what the conversations are going to be like. Did I answer the question there?
I've obviously been to some of the ones that have taken place face to face. And now that they're online, it's fantastic because obviously anybody can join from anywhere in the world. And we've had people from America, somewhere in the Middle East, wasn't there?
Yeah, from Saudi Arabia, India, Scotland,
Yes.
yeah, all over the shop.
Which is fantastic because then we have different cultural perspectives and people sharing from an even wider range of experiences. And it really is, like you say, so dependent. And even when you have the same people, it's dependent also on what's happened in their week or their day, because they'll bring that along. And so it's never the same, even if the combination of people is the same. And I just love that it's a place where we talk about anything and everything, don't we? We jump around all over the place. It's not just about
no idea where you're going to go.
No, it's not a place to be wary of if you've never been to one before, because it's not doom and gloom and sadness, is it? It's really, we'd have an awful lot of laughs, even though you think that's rather strange for a deaf cafe. But it's a great space, I think, just to bring anything that people need to talk about, but maybe have no outlet anywhere else.
I had an email this morning that arrived from somebody wanting to come along to the October one because they can't find anybody that's willing to talk about it. They have a terminal, I presume, a terminal diagnosis from the bit they've said, and they can't find anybody that's willing to talk about death. And you kind of go, this is just balmy. You know, this is somebody that is on that journey. The end of life journey is one that we all go on, you know. And we're all starting it. You could argue we start it from the day we're born, you know, because the guaranteed thing is that we will all die. You know, you may think that maybe we won't have taxes somewhere along the line. Maybe that'll be something that we don't get. But actually, you know, absolutely every single one of us is going to die at some point, and we don't know when, and we don't know what of, and we don't know how. And yet there seems to be a belief that if we don't think about it, then it won't happen. And yeah, my heart really went out to this person, because you kind of go, they just need to be able to say whatever they want to say with no concern for anybody else's sensibilities, if you like. So it's very much the way we set up the Death Cafe is very much as a drop-in. So you come when you want to, you leave when you need to. If there's a topic that's going on that's a bit too close to the knuckle for you at that point, you can drop out and come back. So it's no holds barred, you know. So and I'm aware that at times people have come along when they're newly or recently bereaved, and that can be quite the right environment then, because things can be quite graphic if we're discussing different ways of disposing of human remains, as the phrase goes, or as bodies. Then that can be, when you've got a person in your mind, that can be quite difficult. Whereas in the abstract or in the personal, so when people are looking at what they want to do themselves, where would they like to end up? Well, what would they like their remains to be doing or not doing, you know, at that point, and recognizing that it will happen, you know. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to support that person and give them a safe space where they can bring up anything, they can say anything, they can be really cheesed off, they can be really angry, they can be really upset, they can be whatever, knowing that nobody's there is judging them, and they haven't got to worry about upsetting us. You know, that's quite often the thing. People don't want to talk or feel unable to talk to their loved ones because they don't want to upset their loved ones, and then their loved ones don't want to talk to them because they don't want to accept them. It's like, you're all going to be upset.
Yeah, looking at it from the outside, you kind of think, oh, I wish you could just talk. You could have that space and that freedom to talk, but it isn't easy when we haven't had the experience. We don't, if we're on the outside kind of looking in, it's not us with the diagnosis, it's a member of our family or friend or whatever. We're afraid of saying the wrong thing as well, and hurting or offending, and the other person is not knowing, can I broach this subject? Because none of us have the words or the experience, because we haven't, as would have happened years ago when everything was at home, like you were saying, we would have had that experience from a very young age. My family in Ireland, I saw my first member of the family died when I was around 8 years old, and we had the open casket, and I went in and I saw the body, and they just looked peaceful to me. So I was very fortunate to have that opportunity to talk about things with my family, for it to be out in the open. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't scary. It wasn't you have to keep the children away because it might be upsetting for them. And so that gave me that outlet and that opportunity to explore what is death and what does it mean, and not just they've gone or they've gone to heaven, are they coming back? All of these things that maybe as a child you need to develop that understanding. And that's, I think, why I'm so passionate, because I had that. And then I see other people who haven't, and I can see the contrast. I know that my husband is one of those people who just thinks death is the end. And if I talk about it, it's going to make it happen. And then my life is going to stop. And because he's so full of life, he really struggles with that sudden concept of it's just going to switch and it's going to change and my life is going to go off and I won't be here anymore. He can't get his head around that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what's made me so passionate. But you were saying about how sometimes it can be too close to the knuckle when we're talking about some of the practicalities in the Death Cafe. But then you and I, in our connection around this whole topic, had set up that bereavement workshop to explore all of that, which then led to the love and loss support group that we've got going, which is also online at the moment. So I don't know if you wanted to say a little bit about the difference and what that space provides.
I think it was seeing or having people coming along to the Death Cafe when it wasn't quite the right place for them, but seeing that it was available. Because the charities, were up to here and had had a waiting list if you could get through to anybody. There were the group that was running in Abergavenny no longer running. There was nowhere for anybody to be referred to. And some people, a lot of people will go through the bereavement journey, and yes, it'll be painful. Yes, it'll hurt. Yes, it'll go through different stages of grief. It'll go through different times. But they go through it, and they kind of, it becomes natural, if you like. It becomes part of their life. Other people get stuck, or other people are feeling it so intensely that they feel they're going mad. That they really are, must be the only person that's ever felt this. They can't cope. They can't go on. They don't know how to move themselves forward. They don't want to move themselves forward. So there's a whole kind of collusion of and conflagration of different feelings and emotions and fears that go on there. And I think it was recognizing that there are people that I cared very much about because I'd been involved in their loved ones' funerals that then had nowhere to go. And trying to find a way, and not feeling expert myself, because I'm not, I've done some counselling, but I'm not a counsellor. I've done, obviously I'm doing the work I'm doing now, but feeling that we needed to provide something. And actually, in a lot of ways, the best people to talk with are people that have got an understanding and have been where you are. So that they've actually have gone, yes, the person that's died might have been different, their relationships would have been different, all the rest of it. But actually to be able to kind of go, yeah, I understand. I know. I believe me, I know, I have been there. So rather than I know because I've read it in a book. So this is, you should be at this stage of grief. And it's like, no, so it was fantastic at the point that I bumped into you at that networking event. And I can't remember, was it on something on your card or something you were saying that mentioned grief counselling?
Yeah, it was one of my leaflets, I think.
And so not
that,
only did you look very funky, then you kind of go, oh, that's somebody that's thinking in the same way as me. We need to do something together. And then, as you say, we set up the workshops, and then ongoing from that, to have an ongoing space, a monthly space where people can come and share whether it's a recent bereavement or whether it's years ago. And then get support from whoever's in the group that night. Again, there's no agenda. You don't know who's going to rock up. One of us, both of us are normally there to support it from an external viewpoint, if you like, but also, so using our own experience, using our own thoughts and memories and feelings about our journey with end of life journey, but also death and dying.
And like you were saying about that. Sometimes people literally think they're going mad, and also think maybe that they are becoming physically ill in some way because they're holding on to all that intensity of emotion around grief. And it really does weird things to our perception of what's going on, but also can become physical symptoms that if we could just release it, if we could just express those feelings, it would allow us to process and to start to deal with our grief and our intensity of emotion in a much healthier way, and realize I'm not going mad. I'm not the only one who feels like this. It's a process. It's a journey. I just need to give myself the space and the time to work through it and to find who I am now, because I've changed, because my whole exterior has changed and shifted. Therefore, I need to kind of find my feet in this new reality that I'm in. Yeah,
it's finding a new self. You know, they're no longer the person that they were before. Death changes us, and it's a lifelong journey. And I think people, when you say that, kind of go, "Oh my goodness me, I should be over this." People should be over this in a matter of. It changes you fundamentally for the rest of your life, and therefore it's a lifelong journey, and it's a huge gift. And I say that very carefully. I place that out there very carefully because it's. Of course, we would prefer our loved ones to stay with us forever. We prefer it if nobody ever died, for the most part, if all of those people that we care for so much are still around us, and but that's not life. That's not reality. So, that's acceptance that it's part of our life, and it's something we learn from in the same way as we learn from birth. When a child is born into a family, it changes that family forever. It's never going to be the same. As a parent, your life is never going to be the same. As a grandparent, your life is never going to be the same. If they're your siblings, your life is never going to be the same. And yet we think that at the point where somebody dies, that we'll go back to normal. No, of course, no. We'll be fundamentally changed. And that's a good thing, because it makes us look at life. It makes us review the way that we live life, the way that we treat people, the way that we are with people, how we value people and everything else around us, which I think is very interesting with everything that's been going on with coronavirus recently. That's having a similar effect, and encouraging people to actually look at what's important in life and what is truly valuable. And for the most part, that's not money. For the most part, obviously there are people that are struggling with income and all of that. But the thing that people are missing is the social interaction, is being with their loved ones, is being able to give a hug, being able to just do a simple gesture. So I think it's that recognition that it's a lifetime journey, and that's okay. Most of that lifetime, depending on how old you are, but most of that lifetime won't be painful. It's not like you're going to be suffering for the rest of your lifetime because your loved one has died. But it's sticking to the chair. There's always a problem with the leather seat, isn't it? Sorry. Hey, I never know what you're going to get with me. So it's. I forgot what I was saying.
Just talking about that whole fact that it's a life journey, and that although the person has died, it doesn't mean the rest of your life is going to be lived in pain at their loss.
Mm-hmm. So I did some training last year before, can't quite remember. It's all a blur. This year has been so odd. I did some training as an end-of-life doula, so end-of-life support, because I felt it was something that would fit very well with my current work, but also it would give me a level of confidence and understanding, and be able to, provide more skills to me, if you like. And it was fascinating doing that, because part of the process was connecting with grief in your own life. So my dad died 16, 17 years ago, something like that. Keep on forgetting to add it up as it goes on to another year. And most of the time, I am absolutely fine. I might think of him where, there's something happens in the house and you kind of go, oh, Dad would know what to do with that. Or Dad would, what do you know? What's going on? Or a little memory that pops up and I have an image of him with the boys when they were small, or something like that. And when that happens, it tends to be but in the process of unpacking stuff, if you like, in my training, we were asked to bring along something that had a physical thing that had some kind of meaning for us around loss. And I went through, as I do, I went through lots of options of what would be good enough, what would be right, what would be appropriate, all of those things. I didn't want to get it wrong. It's got to be, competitive side of me, or but just so concerned about getting it wrong. But the thing I thought of first of all was the thing I picked up just as I was going through the door, and it was a file that's travelled with me since my dad died. It's been in the bottom of my Butsudan, which is what I chance to every day as a Buddhist. So in the bottom of this cupboard for all these years, and it's got loads of stuff in it to do with my dad. So it's got the Order of Ceremony in it. I knew that was in there. So the Order of Service, as a lot of people will call it. I knew it had some photographs in it. I had no recollection what else was in there, but I hadn't been able to open it. I hadn't opened it at all, and I couldn't face it. And it was there, and I knew it was there, and it was kept there. And while it was there we go, no problem. And it was extraordinary. So we were only a small group. There were 5 of us there, I think. But I undid it for the first time and started removing things from it. And it was incredibly emotional, incredibly funny, incredibly moving. I found a check, and they're kind of going, blow me. I went, I didn't quite say blow me. Obviously, this is far too out of date to cash. Did I know it was out of, why have I not cashed it? What's it doing in there? And I couldn't remember the backstory to it, but it had my dad's signature on it. And the one thing that has always moved me has been my dad's writing. Anytime I see my dad's writing, it's always been an emotional response to it. So I was crying, I was laughing, I was talking about everything as I was taking it out. I was sharing with the group what it was that I was seeing. And it was fascinating to see the different people's reactions. One person kind of going, are you all right? Do you think maybe you should put it away? And you kind of go, no, this is really good, because this is connecting me with that time. Yeah, it's almost like I put all of my emotions into this folder and shoved it away so I could carry on with life. And to feel that intensity of love and loss for this man who was, there we go. I get it all the time. Yeah. For this man, with all his faults, with all his foibles, with everything else, to be able to spend that time was a real privilege. And the fact that I was crying, I wasn't hurting. The fact that I was connecting with him was just such a joy. And it was a really important lesson, I think, for me, and hopefully for the other people that were there as well, because it was just that understanding that the pain goes, but if you touch me just in that place, I will feel it as strongly as I did on the day he died.
And it doesn't necessarily, it may look from the outside as if it's purely painful, but actually what it is intense. It may not be painful, it's intense. And I learned a song years ago that sang about we can't paint a sunrise without using orange and red. And we in a society, we tend to label emotions as good or bad quite often. So anger is bad and pain is bad. But actually, without those, where's the color in our life? And you maybe don't want that intensity all the time, every day, but still, like you say, to be able to connect in, to feel him there as strongly as if he was there for you to see, to touch, all of those things. It's amazing, and it's just the other side of the love, isn't it? The grief, the pain, the intensity that we feel is actually just saying, this is how much you love this person. This is how much a part of your life they were. This is how precious and special that person was. So moving maybe them from the pain into, actually, these are the things that I treasure. These are the things that I never want to lose.
Yeah, and I think it's not this is what he was, this is what he is. So he is still that important part in my life, albeit that he's not physically around. But there are points where I can hear his voice. And you can go, all right, yeah. Well, sorry, Dad, but I disagree with you on that one. Or, yeah, of course, that's what he'd be saying. I knew I should have checked the tyres on the car, because it's what he would have said. So, and that ability to recognise him around me in the things that I think, the things that I say, the way that I be, and we're very different characters, but it's absolutely brilliant. And that for me has been so helpful, because what I endeavour to do is to connect my clients, the families that I'm working with, to this in their own lives, in their journey, however long or short a journey that is for them, to feel that. But that absolute belief that there's whatever you think faith-wise, and it's nothing to do with faith, absolutely nothing to do with faith. But there's a connection between us and them that's passed down, through the generations. So you suddenly turn around and you're looking at your grandchild, and they suddenly look like your dad, or their mannerism is like, and you've never seen it before, and suddenly it's there. It's that connection. That's what I'm talking about, and that when they suddenly come out with the phrase, or the tone of voice is the same, or they, one of my sons started growing a beard at one point, and it had ginger in it. Hopeless beard. Hope he's not listening. But it had ginger in it, and my dad's beard had ginger. He had no ginger in his hair, but he had ginger in his beard, and it was like, there we go. It's going down the generations. The little bits of us travel all through those people that we love. Life, all the way through the life.
Even if it was a child that was born after the grandparent, great-grandparent has died, then you see them in the child, and you think, how? Because you obviously didn't learn that. It's not a learned behavior that you saw, and yet there it is. It's amazing. But I'd just like to move on, because I'd like to also talk about the amazing weddings that you create. So if you can maybe just share a little what I really love about what you do, and you've just alluded to it with the funerals as well. You make it so personal and so bespoke, and you listen so deeply, so attentively, and bring it all so alive for the person, the couple, the family, whoever it is, for whatever ceremony. So tell us a little bit about the different kinds of wedding ceremonies that you've created, and how you make it so beautiful and so personal for each individual couple.
Right, okay. I think that the important thing is that it starts off with the couple, and quite often people are looking for something a bit different, but they don't quite know what that is or how they can achieve it. And particularly, I don't know about you, but at the point I got married, it seemed like everyone around me was getting married. So you got to go to an awful lot of weddings in a short space of time. And you suddenly kind of go, oh, I've heard that reading before. Oh, I've heard those words before. Because all of mine were done by a registrar. I don't think I went to any church weddings at that point. And it was that understanding, and particularly then reflected at the point I was a registrar, and I knew that I was doing the same ceremony time after time after time. The only thing that was different was the people's names. And you kind of go, actually, I can make it sound like I've never said it before, but that's not the thing, because if I'm sat in the audience, and it happens now, if I'm sat as the guests, that's what they're called, isn't it? As a guest, I recognise chunks that I've used that have been used by the registrars. I recognise, and you kind of go, this. If you've chosen that to be unique to you, then what a shame that actually you haven't got a wider remit of what you can look at or what you can use. And I hate the fact there are restrictions on things. For me, at the point you're making the biggest commitment of your life to anybody, then that's the point you should be making a commitment that is meaningful to you. So we might talk christenings later and naming ceremonies later. I don't know. We might run out of time. But it's a similar thing there, that actually I want my husband to be making promises to me that are relevant to us. They're important to us, that have meaning for us, regardless of whether they legally sound nice or whether they, and the legal ceremony in the UK is the verbal contract. It's the verbal vows that you say. That's the point where you're legally married. It's not the point where you sign the register, which is where most people think it is. It's the vows that you say. So they have a particular seriousness, somberness to them, which can sometimes distract from the couple. So it's always a start of kind of, right, tell me about yourself. Let's find out about you. Quite often couples will have chosen their venue before they meet me. Sometimes not, in which case we might go on venue hunting together, which can be great fun. But quite often they've chosen their venue, so we know the space that we're going to be in, or we might know what's traditionally used there. But we can then look at, okay, that's the ceremony room, but what about outside? There's that lovely woodland over there. Why don't we do it there? There's a lake there. Why don't we go down there? We can do it wherever you want. So it's then starting to free up the couples to think about what is actually important to them and what they want it to be. I had one couple who were doing a piss up in a brewery, Now, so they decided that was what we wanted, and we did. So it was fantastic. We did the wedding at the brewery, and they were very specific about not wanting to have any mention of eternity. So we're making a commitment to each other for this lifetime. That's it. They were very particular on things that they wanted or things they didn't want. But within that, then it was like, right, so how do we then embrace everything there that's about you? They were quite into futuristic writings, and so it's kind of like it's all about what are your interests, what's important to you, what do you need to hear, or what do you need to say to the person that you're making this commitment to? Who else do you want to be involved? So I love the fact that I can get lots and lots and lots of people. I can get all of the guests involved in the ceremony. It depends on what the couple want. So it's very different anyway. My ceremonies will tend to be quite informal and relaxed, which then gives you a fantastic juxtaposition at the point where we do the vows, or make the commitments in whatever way we're doing it. That heightens it because we've been quite informal beforehand. So then the sincerity and the emotion of what's being said between this couple, one to the other, just becomes heightened because we've been quite relaxed, and people aren't scared about making a noise, coughing when they shouldn't, or the child playing around, or being informal and actually not listening to what's going on. Because I think a lot of people will go to a wedding and not really listen because they've heard it before.
Yeah.
So they tend to get a bit woken up because I'll involve them in it. So I'll be chatting to them before the bride and groom come in, or the couple come in, and we'll be chatting and I'll be joking with them. So we'll be talking about what's going on and what to expect. Quite often there may be something that goes around the whole room. So if I'm doing a hand fasting, I'll quite often send the ribbon box around everybody in the room, and they're all kind of going. I don't tell them what it is. I just say, hold it for a moment and just imbue it with your love, with your wishes for this couple. Everything that you want them to achieve, just have a think about it while you're holding this, and then pass it on to the next person. Make sure I get it by the time I get to that bit of the ceremony. But so that people are involved in it, and they can kind of talk to each other. I can remember at my wedding, my my uncle turning to my dad and going, "Well, what are they doing now?" in an incredibly loud voice. Because I was having a Buddhist ceremony, and of course none of my family had any idea what was happening, and it just made me hoot because it was like, well, of course you've got no idea what's happening, so that's fine. Why wouldn't you say to each other? So I think it's about allowing all of your guests there to be part of what's going on, and there are lots of different rituals that people can use. If they feel fitting for them. So you don't, and these are things like hand fasting, which a lot of people have heard of. That's the binding of two hands together with ribbons or cords. That's very much a pagan ceremony. That's some dispute about whether it came over with the Vikings or whether it was already here. I like to think it was already here. But that's a great one for involving different members of the family. So different people can choose the colours of the ribbons. All of the ribbon colours have got different meanings. Different people can choose the ribbons. Members of the family can come up and do the binding with me. So children can do it, adults can do it. I'd had one, which was a vow renewal, and because they had bunting as part of their decoration, and while we were talking, so we met 4 hours later. So my husband was getting worried, but we were talking about Tibetan prayer flags. Because they'd been one of their trips, and I kind of go, well, why don't we combine that? Why don't we have bunting as part of the hand fasting as one of the wraps, but I'll make it so it's personalized, and then everybody can write a message or can sign it, so that at the point that we're binding your hands together, we're binding it with all the love of all the best wishes of your family and friends that are there. It was beautiful, beautiful moment, and everybody was a part of it, There's a fantastic gin ceremony, which is very much of the moment, as gin is very much here and now. It's a simple ceremony. There's a whole load of unity ceremonies that are two things coming together and creating something new and unique that's stronger than the two individuals. But those two things still stand separate. So the gin ceremony, logically enough, you had two flavors of gin, and representing one for each of the couple. They pour them into a vessel, so they become a new flavor of gin that is unique to that couple, and then they sip from it, which is kind of making that commitment to each other. I love it if we do it in a quaich, so in a Scottish double-handed loving cup, which I've got it down here, I think. I love doing it in there, and then sending it round to all the guests so everybody else can have a sip as well. COVID-wise, you have to be a little bit careful of that. So nowadays it would probably be that there'd be little shot glasses with little shots of the samples, that's the word, of the drink in there. But it's a fantastic way of involving everybody in what's going on. Not everyone wants to do it. That's absolutely fine. But then, it's not they're not there. Your guests aren't there sitting there watching and waiting until they can get onto a drink or to have something to eat. They're involved in your commitment to each other. I always encourage.
I was just going to say, I love how you make it so that the couple are being so unique so true to themselves, so authentic to themselves, and that is brought in. And like you were saying about how this is such an important day, you starting the rest of their time together, that they're able to do that in authenticity. So I hear of a lot of people who go into relationships and they kind of get lost in that relationship because quite often the woman is following the man. The whole wedding thing is giving this woman to this man in the old traditional style. And I love that the ceremonies that you create are very much the two unique individuals authentically coming together and saying, this is who I am, and I commit to sharing this with you, and vice versa. That it doesn't have to be that old traditional kind of marriage with the old archaic words. And if that's what you choose, that's absolutely fine, if that's authentic to you. But that there are options and there are choices, and that people can do things a different way, and that you give them the freedom to really express what is true for me, to be authentic and to start this journey together, connection together in authenticity. And I love that.
Yeah, it is so important. It's that recognition that you don't become one. You kind of go, oh, no, you don't become one. You are two individuals. You are both bringing something different to this relationship. You rely on each other to make this relationship work. There are times when one of you is stronger or the other is stronger, when one of you needs support or the other one does, when one is going through a difficult time or the other one is. It's about coming together and going in the same direction. It's not about becoming one person. And the importance of celebrating the difference, if you like, kind of going, I will support your dreams, whatever your dreams are, even if they're not my dreams. I will support you to fulfill your dreams in whatever way feels right for you. And I think that's the importance of being able to craft your own vows and to make them something that is particularly meaningful for you. So there are lovely phrases around, there are lovely things you can include, but the important thing is whatever you're committing to is something that you want to commit to and something that has meaning for you. And whether that's, I'm determined that I'm going to pick up the towel off the kitchen, not the kitchen, off the bedroom floor and hang it up every day, because that's not something that happens. I promise to listen, because actually I know I quite often will dive in and want to try and solve the problem without actually allowing you the space to say what it is and to express whatever's going on. So they can be, vows can be incredibly deep. They can be very, excuse me, 1 second, let me just, that's known as
so much more meaningful for that than the fixed vows that you would have in the registered ceremony. But that you can actually say what's true for you, what you really deeply mean, what you can really connect with, and the promises therefore that mean so much more to you, and that hopefully you'll take much more seriously and commit to on a deeper level, because they are from your very heart. And being able to follow that, that's something that I'm passionate about for all of us in any area of our lives, that we can be true to ourselves, that we don't feel we have to fit in to whatever society's demands or expectations, all those shoulds and ought tos and have tos, but that we can just go, no, I am me, and I want to be me and express me. And that the couple in your ceremonies can do that in front of everybody and with the support, feeling that support and involvement of everybody else. And just quickly before we do run out of time, I'd love you then to relate that, as you were kind of touching on a little bit before, but the whole naming ceremony, because that in itself is such a magical moment that you give the child, or whatever age they are, that name that is theirs, uniquely theirs, for however long they choose to stay with it. I happened to change mine by deed poll when I was 18. But and even that, you know, I don't know, have you ever done a naming ceremony for somebody who has given themselves their name?
I haven't, but I've been completely open to it, and I think there are lots of different reasons for naming ceremonies. And it's a little known ceremony in a lot of ways. So people in this country traditionally, you know, a child's born and they arrange a christening. So whether they've ever attended church, whether they go regularly to a church or a chapel, whether they have a Christian belief or not, that tends to be the route, because that's what you do. And if you have that faith, absolutely, that's of course what you want to do. It's an incredible moment of commitment on behalf of everybody that's there, and welcoming that child into that faith. If that's not your faith, then it seems a really odd thing to do. And the naming ceremony, it is interesting, because quite often it happens when everybody knows the name of the child already. You know, so it's kind of like, oh, it's not a surprise. We've had the gender reveal before they were born, and now we've had the name as soon as they're born. Welcome, so and so, so and so. And you kind of go, yeah. So sometimes the name is particularly relevant, and in some ways more so when the child is older or when it's an adult. So, but the opportunity for people to welcome that child into that family and into that family group, so that includes all of the friends that are there as well. For people that are taking on the role of responsible adults, whatever you choose to call them, there are different phrases and different words, but that they are actually committing to something they are intending to do. So you've got the friend that is no good with babies, but is full of adventure and is going to take them, you know, all kinds of walking holidays and trips when they're big enough to do that. You've got those that are absolutely hopeless at older children, but really will always be there and do babysitting. You know, whatever the commitment is that those special adults, that role that they're prepared to take and prepared to make in that child's life, that's what they should be committing to, so that they therefore are going to follow it through, and they will have a role in that child's life. And for the parents to know why and be able to express why they've chosen these people to have this special role in their child's life, and for those special adults to be able to specify what it is and what they're feeling about it. You know, how they think they can contribute to that family, or how happy they are for that family. Again, everything is written from scratch, so there's no kind of this is what you have to say, this is what you have to be. You haven't got to have two godfathers and one godmother if it's a boy, and you know, other way around. You haven't got to have set beliefs. That's not what you're committing to. What you're committing to, and as a group, what everyone is committing to, is supporting that family as they grow and develop. And you know, to be the person who, you know, I want to be the one that child will come and talk to when they don't want to talk to their parents, you know, when they're that really lovely teenage stage. I want to be that kind of adult. So I'm on the outside, but actually, so I'm not there. I'm not necessarily going to be buying presents every Christmas, every birthday. But actually, at the point that they need me, I will be there, and I will support the whole family in that time and at that point. And again, there are beautiful ways that people can make that commitment, can show things in a way that has meaning for them. And if you're adopting children, if you're bringing children, or if you're blending a family, so in a wedding, you know, to actually do something that brings the focus into those children and your commitment to them. You know, so if you're adopting children, to know that not only is it the parents that are adopting, the new adoptive parents, but it's everybody else that's in this room that is adopting you, and you're so special to us. And this is the commitment. So quite often I do something like a sand ceremony. So I was reaching up there because I happen to have one on me. So this is often used in a wedding ceremony, but works fantastically in a family adopting ceremony, because then everybody can have a different colour. So the children have a different colour, the adults have different colour. The special adults can have colours if they want, and they're all pouring that into this one vessel. That, in fact, the last one I did for a family, we did 3 vessels, so that the parents had one, and then each of the children that they were adopting had their own one, which started off with their colour at the bottom. And it was just everybody that was committing to them, to being involved with their life, was pouring their colour in and kind of going, see, we're all interconnected. You can't part these grains of sand now. So all the colours are separate. You can see that they're all different. You can see that it's a unique pattern that's formed from that, but you can't possibly pull those grains of sand apart. And that's the commitment we're making to you. You kind of go, yeah, that for me is the beauty of the naming ceremony or the welcoming ceremony. And I think, as you say, to do it for somebody that has, maybe they've transitioned, so they have gained a new name entirely that has a whole personality with it, or whether they're changing the name because of whatever reason, something that's happened in their past that they wanted to break away from. They just don't like that name, possibly, or relationships in their family have been difficult. And it's, there are lots of different reasons why people might choose to change that area of themselves, and to mark it in a way that is them making a commitment to themselves and everyone around them saying, we're supporting you in this. These are milestone events. They're all milestones. And they're milestones for a reason, because they're big and they have a huge impact on the way that we live going forward. How better than to celebrate in a very personal and meaningful way?
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's like with celebrating our wins, we don't do enough of that, and having these milestones in our life and really marking them with everybody else within the wider circle as well, to have that connection. And I think, that's all so precious and so special. And I hadn't heard that full explanation of a naming ceremony before. So I had never thought of having those significant adults as being, right, you're the babysitting person because that is your skill and your talent and your passion, and you are the adventurous when the child is a little bit older, and you are the one who's good with teenagers. And I love that as well, that it's bringing in all of those individual gifts, that because we all have our unique gifts, we're not all the same, we're not all babysitters, and we're not all play with the toddler, and we're not all, I'm here to talk to you as a teenager when you're going through all that angst and you don't want to talk to your parents. Playing to people's strengths and valuing those strengths, and drawing them out and showing the young person growing up as well. These are all valuable different aspects. You don't have to be one thing or have to be another. You can be whatever you are, creating that environment already where just we celebrate who you are. And that doesn't have to be anything that we decide from the outside. That's something that you get to decide just for yourself. I love that. Beautiful.
And you could do like having a memory box that gets opened on the 18th birthday. So everybody puts in there a photograph of them as they are now with a message, because not all of those people will still be there in 18 years' time. And yet to know what they were thinking and feeling about you 18 years ago at the point where you were a baby, how meaningful is that? How touching is that photograph that is special, that they've chosen to give you? There's some reason why they've wanted that one to be with you. It is about people being able to express themselves, finding the right way. I always say that I enable people to find their voice so that they can find how they choose to celebrate, whatever that is. And sometimes that's really traditional. And if that's the way, if it's your voice, let's go for it. Absolutely, we can do it. Sometimes it's really out there. So obviously I do a whole steampunk side of things as well, which tends to be slightly more out there. But there's loads of ground in between. And it's not about being alternative to be alternative. It's about being authentic. I love that word. I think I'm going to pinch it. It is enabling people to be authentic as a couple, as a family, whatever that milestone is that they're marking at that point.
And that's exactly why I invited you, because that's so much what I'm passionate about, being authentic, because it sets us free. And that's, I believe, why we're here, to find how to be more and more ourselves. That's what I believe our purpose is. Our purpose isn't necessarily the thing we do. We place so much value on the thing that we do, and we see ourselves as the thing that we do. But we are who we are, and I believe that our purpose is actually more how we do things, how we express ourselves, how we be more and more authentic, more and more of who we are. So Jane, it's been absolutely a pleasure and a delight and a great joy for me to have you here as my first guest. Thank you so, so much for coming along, for all your wonderful sharing. It's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's been a complete pleasure.
And so I'll sign it off there for now, and just watch in the group, and I'll be sharing who my next guest will be. I think actually the next one might be two. I've got a couple coming on for certainly one of the sessions, but yes, watch in the group and I will share more information very shortly. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.